Okay, we'll start with the Shema. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hashem's oneness, the oneness of the Jewish people, God, Torah, and Israel are all one. That unity is expressed by the Shema, which we say, such a simple statement, but it's the most profound thing we can actually articulate. It says that there's one thing that we can say about Hashem is one. Any other description falls short, but the one is the one thing that we can say that we can attest and affirm. So very powerful. And we'll begin also with the blessing for our learning together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Sorry about that. So nice to see you. Another week. We are here together. And as I said, hello, Marjorie. Hello, Debbie. Nice to see you. Hold on, let me just admit some people coming in here. Hold on, sorry. So beautiful that we have this week during the very beginning of the month of Adar. So thankfully having the rescue of the two hostages from Gaza, which was just an incredible thing. Every morning when I wake up, I ask my husband, Steve, who has gotten up earlier than me to go to shul. He comes in to wake me up and I always say, so what's happening? And then he woke me up with the great news of the rescue of the hostages, which was so amazing. So as we know, that as Jewish people, we carry the paradox of being able to be in joy and pain at the same time. It's like the bitter herbs dipped in the harosis, and like we swallow the whole thing together. So we have the pain of those who are still there and the ongoing horrors of what we're hearing about what people went through, things I can't even really say with my mouth because it's so revolting. I can't even say it. And at the same time, being elated that two of the hostages were freed and reunited with their families. So what I want to talk about are some things that you have probably heard about, and it'll be in the context of this week's parsha. This week's parsha, which is Truma. And Parshas Truma starts the parshas that are related to the building of the Mishkan. And this is the part of the Torah where people kind of start to nod off. We have Bereshit, we have Genesis, the story of creation and our founding fathers and mothers and all of the beginnings of the Jewish people. And we have Exodus and our enslavement and the drama of the plagues and the Exodus from Egypt and splitting of the sea, going to Mount Sinai. All of these things are so dramatic. And then we get to the building of the Mishkan. And everyone's like, call me when we get to Bamidbar, call me when we get to, Korach's rebellion and the spies, and everyone just kind of goes to sleep for this part. So the fact that is our natural tendency actually tells us that this is the most significant part of the Torah, that the part where you tend to go to sleep are the parts that are the most, the deepest and the most significant. So we're going to come back and talk about that in the context of what we're going to share now about the hostages. So again, and we're not going to talk about all the details, and I'm sorry, I'm fuzzy about some of the details, the names, the places, and all that. So if you want more information, I can give it to you afterwards. I'll be happy to, but I just want to kind of put this all together. Baruch Hashem, thank God we have the amazing IDF. We have our soldiers, the people who are literally giving their heart and soul, bodies, lives, and everything to serve our people and to save our people. Just as a PS afterwards, there was a little blurb I saw, and I put it on my Am Yisrael Chai WhatsApp group, but it said that one of the hostages didn't have any shoes when he was rescued, and the soldier carried the hostage. These looked like kind of big men, even though they had been starved, and then gave him his boots. The soldier gave him his boots and then went back out into the field with himself not having any shoes. And I'm like, this is the Jewish people. It is just so inspiring. And, somebody does that and they're not thinking. They just do what comes naturally to them. And what's naturally comes to them is to be giving. And it's just so incredible. But to back up, the success of that operation, I didn't look at the camera, the footage that showed the rescue with all of the bullets and the bombings and everything else going on, but it was amazing that it was able to be successful. And the question is, what made that successful? So we know, and we have to keep telling ourselves and reminding ourselves that the Jewish people operate on a different plane of existence than the rest of the world. We are united in body, mind, spirit, all together. And the things that people do in one place affect what goes on here. We are all connected. And there were 3 things that were going on that if you want to connect the dots, and some of this is, you can say, oh, it was just a coincidence, it was just a coincidence, it was just a coincidence. Or you can say, this is amazing, the hand of God and what our interrelationship is. So just as an aside, remember that even in the splitting of the sea, the Torah itself describes that the wind blew all night long before it split. So that people could say, oh, the reason it split is because the wind blew and it created kind of like a reverse tsunami type of thing. So someone could say that. Or you can sing Shira, you can sing a song and thank God. You can thank God. So what are the things that happened? Number one of the families of these hostages had gone to a synagogue to speak to the people of the synagogue. They themselves were secular, and they had gone with a representative, somebody who came along with the family. And they just went to the shul and they had a chance to speak and talk to the members. And the people in the community said, like, what would you like us to do? Like, what do you want? Do you want money? Do you want this? They said, no, we don't want anything. We just want to raise, just to remember our family members, like, just don't forget them, to think about them and to have the awareness. And they were like, okay, what do you think Israel should do? It was like, I don't know. We don't know what Israel should do, but we don't know. We're just here to raise awareness. The Rebbitzin said to the wife, she said, well, let me ask you something. Do you light Shabbos candles? And she's like, no. She said, well, I want you to promise me that you're going to start lighting Shabbos candles, like starting this week, in the merit of the return of your father. I want you to do that, or husband, whatever it is. And she's like, she agreed. And then she said to her husband, do you put on tefillin? And he's like, no, because I want you to start putting on tefillin. I have a pair of tefillin in my husband's office. You'll come to tomorrow and I'll give you the tefillin. I want you to put them on every single day in the merit that your family will be reunited. He's like, well, could I start next week? Famous last words. Can I start next week? She's like, no, you can start tomorrow. So it's like, okay. And then asked the representative who was with them the same question. Do you put on tefillin? He was like, no. He said, and you're going to put on tefillin too. And they agreed. And then the woman started to cry. She said, can I have another pair of tefillin for when my father comes home? I will give them to him so that he can start putting on tefillin. And that was one of the family, the men who was saved. And they all started doing that. And they like made that commitment, and that's what they're following through with. So it was all secular people who were pushed, but then took it on. And that was that. So that's taking on the mitzvah. You know, what altars decree? Teshuvah, tefillah, tzedakah. This is like the teshuvah, is to return to the path that we are supposed to be on. This is that. And then the next thing is a group, and you can see the recording of this, of a woman who does a Zoom get together with kids, between 5,000 and 10,000 children, of saying, you know, Tehillim, Psalms, and having conversations with them for a self-esteem. And she had on an Israeli soldier on. It's like a couple of nights ago, the night that ended up being the night of the rescue. And she just was so moved by having the soldier talk to them that she said to the boy who was going to lead the Tehillim, when you get to line 8, verse 8, Eila barecha ve'eila basusim va'anachnu b'shem Hashem naskir. Some people are with the power of the their horses and by their chariots, but we mention Hashem's name. That is our strength. I want you to yell that out. And they yelled it out. And then the next day she finds out that the time exactly when they were saying it, because IDF published, they said that the rescue was at 1:49 a.m. in Israel, which was at 6:49. Well, 6:40. I get my times backward. 6:49 in New York Eastern Standard Time when they had this thing. That's when the kids were saying this Tehillim and this line and screaming it out. And this was the time when the rescue operation started. Now you could say, first of all, who needs to know? This sounds like candle lighting time. Like, since when do you need to know that the rescue operation was at 1:49, which is like about 10 of 2. So, but it was like that. It's like, oh, right at that moment, she went back to the recordings. That is right at the moment when we were saying the Tehillim. So we have the power of that and the special power of children. So I didn't have a chance to look it up. Somebody probably knows there's a beautiful midrash that says that in Shushan, that Mordechai gathered the children of Shushan that were learning Torah and davening in the merit of saving the Jews from the decree of Haman. And that was part of the turning point that showed the merit of the Jewish people was the children. So you could see the Zoom thing just looking like all your faces with all these little kids saying this, the Tehillim is like, this does something. This does something. So that's the second piece. And the third piece was put out by Jeremy Gimple, talking about the president of Argentina. The president of Argentina, who came to Israel, the most pro-Israel, pro-Jewish, openly, unapologetically in favor of Judaism, Torah, God, the Torah, Jerusalem, goes to the Kotel crying. So he said they have never seen somebody, a leader from any country at any time in the history of Israel here, so emotional and passionate in his praying at the Kotel. So it's, people usually will, they put in the perfunctory note. I mean, it probably says, please get reelected. I mean, I don't know what they're putting on there, which is fine. That's good. But, it's not something like that he was crying and praying for his people, praying for Israel, praying for the Jewish people. And then that night, he also spoke at Yad Vashem. And he spoke about the prophecy and about the recounting in the Talmud about Rabbi Akiva, who was with his students, and they saw the foxes on the Temple Mount, and the students were crying. And Rabbi Akiva says, why are you crying? So like the prophecy that the temple is destroyed and there's the foxes, but that means also that the prophecy, if that comes true, then the other prophecy will also come true, which is that it will be rebuilt. And so Rabbi Akiva was laughing. So this is the president, Javier, and I can't remember exactly how to pronounce his last name, Javier Milei. So he told this, and it was that night before, and then that was the night of the rescue, is during the middle of the night. So what's so interesting about that? It says, here he is, and he's speaking about this and giving the Jewish people chizuk, giving them strength about, Mashiach's going to come, the temple's going to be rebuilt, like you need to hang in there. So what's fascinating is the people who were rescued were from Argentina. Now, the two men were from Argentinian Jews. Now, it's not like out of all of the hostages, it was the ones from Argentina that were rescued. His people. So unbelievable. And in addition to that, he also pointed out, Javier didn't point, I'm not like I'm on a first name basis with him, but Javier pointed out, he was not the one who pointed it out, Jeremy Gimple pointed out that in the Talmud in Sanhedrin, page 98b, is a description. It says, who's going to be the one, what's going to be the name of the person who's going to bring the good tidings, like this sounds like so Christian. Who's going to bring the gospel? That's what gospel means, the good tidings, the good news. Who's going to bring the good news about the coming of Mashiach? And what's his name going to be? So like, we'll be ready for him. So there's a number of answers that are given. One is Shiloh, because that's actually the name mentioned in Jacob's blessing to Yehuda, that the scepter will not depart from Yehuda until Shiloh comes, and Shiloh is, that must be the Mashiach, because that has to do with the kingship, the kingdom of the Jewish people. One comment says, no, the person's name will be Chanina, from the name Chen, which means graciousness, the graciousness of God. Another one says, no, it's Menachem, not Menachem like be Menachem Avel. It means to be comfort, to comfort somebody. And then there's another one that said, at the end, it says, no, his name is going to be leper. It's like leper. So lepers is like, it doesn't say leper, it's translated as leper, but the word is chavira. Chavira, which means white. But chavira, Javier, says that this is like the connection of what's his name going to be. It's going to be like somebody who didn't know Spanish so well. Javier, Javira, it's going to be him, and he will be from the house of Rebbe. Now, one of the things that Javier, the president Javier, said is that he's a student of the Rebbe, of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And when he's finished with his presidency, he wants to convert to Judaism. So it's like, here's Javier from the house of the presidency, who is a student of the Rebbe. And he's coming with the news for the Jewish people, again, unapologetic, unabashedly, like, you all hang in there and I'm praying for you. And his people were the ones who were rescued. So you take these things, it's like let's connect the dots of what happens and how things work. And we don't often get to see it, but every once in a while, the veils part, and we have access to information. And thank God for our information age, where you can get the story, where you can get the exact time that the mission started, and the exact time that they were having the Zoom call in New York, and like the president was here, and that the family was meeting with the Rebbetzin and a shul and taking on these mitzvot, and all of these things are recorded and known, and you can put it together. So when we think about this, also in the month of Adar, we go to the story of the Megillah. Now, on Purim, when we read the Megillah, the whole Megillah reading takes 25 minutes, some very short amount of time. But the story happened over 12 years. Over 12 years. If you look in the Megillah, it tells you on the reign of Achashverosh, this happened in the first year, this happened in the third year, the fifth year, the ninth year, the 10th year, the 12th year. The people who are experiencing it, the time that it took for everything to unfold and all the little bits and pieces, Vashti, Esther, Haman, the plan to assassinate Achashverosh, which was heard by Mordecai, who reveals it to Esther. All of these things happened, and they all seem like these moments in time. And it's not until the end that you get to put it all together. And then when we look at it, it looks like a straightforward story. But when it's happening, you may not even notice it, because the time, space, relationship is such that this happened there, this happened then. What do these things have anything to do with each other until we see, oh, they had everything to do with each other, and it's all connected. In my opinion, and it's not my opinion, I think this is one of the reasons why, unlike the reading of the Torah, the reading of the Megillah, you must hear every word. Because the story goes by so quickly that if you start schmoozing or you miss something very key and significant that happens. This story is unfolding in front of our faces here, and we should really take such comfort and be inspired to know that what we're doing matters, and we can connect the dots here and see that Hashem's hand and our hand together is altering the reality, the spiritual reality, and is altering what's happening on the ground. Because everyone's saying that this rescue mission should not have been successful. It should have been unsuccessful. And we know that things can go wrong, because we know those other hostages who came out and were accidentally killed by the IDF. We know lots of things can go wrong, even under the best of circumstances. So, in other words, keep up the good work. And our davening, our Torah study, our mitzvahs, the things that we take on that are new or challenging for us, make a difference and are all adding into I won't even call it a pot, because that makes it sound too jumbled. It goes into the equation. It all goes into the equation of how things are going to actually work out. So speaking of equations, that is what we want to talk about with the building of the Mishkan. We took our kids in Florida to the Children's Museum there I think it was in Hollywood, Florida. And so they have all these different centers. And one of them was like, oh, our grandson said, like, let's go in here. It was like to build something. So they had one area like where you could build, like, I said, let's do this. It was like the paper airplane. That's like my level of building. Let's do this. No, I want to do something else. So it goes to this table that has all of these like wires and batteries, and I don't even know what they were. I started like kind of hyperventilating as soon as I saw it, because I'm like, I don't know what to do with all this. There's just like all these different colored, like red wires, blue wires. And then there are all these instructions, like put the red wire here and it should be this long and connect it this way. And I'm like, Jordan, I don't know if Omi really knows how to do this. I thought, especially since it was electricity, and I'm like, I don't like electrocute myself here, like trying to do some sort of kids project. But somebody else, another mother, was working with her kids, and they had something that was actually whirling around and doing something and lighting up. I'm like, that's interesting. So I'm like, there's me with this same pile of stuff, and there's her with this stuff that she actually made something. But she was following the directions, and she had like the 4-inch wire and the 6-inch, and then the bracket, and I don't know what they were. But if you just looked at this pile of things, you would say, well, this isn't anything. It's just like all of this stuff, all this equipment. But it's like, no, but if you put it together and you put it together correctly, it turns into something that is not just greater than the sum of its parts, but it does something that you wouldn't be able to tell they could do it based on what you see when you're looking at it. You wouldn't think it was going to turn into anything. It just looks like a pile of garbage. So it's just like stuff. So not that the things having to do with the Mishkan seem like a pile of garbage, but it's just materials. And yet there are very exquisitely specific instructions, how long each piece has to be, how it's to be connected. If IKEA would give directions like this, we would all be masters. We could do it, okay? Because it tells you exactly, this has to go into the gold socket, it has to stand together, and it has to be flush, and it has to be a bar, and it has to be upright, growing the same way that it grew as a tree. It has to be facing that way, instead of just like put up the plank. When we put up our sukkah in Denver, it only had 2 pieces, but we had to label the 2 pieces, like which one went against the house. And so, because like, what do we know? Anyway, so this was very specific. It told exactly how to do it. Why? So we've been learning this together for years and years and years. And I always feel like, okay, I think I'm really getting it. However, every year it's like, no, I didn't get it until I think I'm getting more of it now. What I want to offer, and this was from a beautiful shiur from Rabbi Shalom Aaron Ehrenfeld on Torah Anytime, is talking about what was the building of the Mishkan about? What was it? It says, it served many functions and it has many ways of looking at it. But the main concept was that it was designed to be able to be a space, place, experience that would allow the divine to come down and connect with human beings in a physical world. So basically, it'd be like a way, if you were saying it like in a scientific, and I want to look at this more from a scientific perspective, if there was a way that you could harness the physical energy of the universe, and that there was a way to funnel that into a place where it could be accessed for everyone. So in a way, you could kind of think like, this is unfortunately sometimes destructive, but also powerful, to think of like atomic energy. Okay, where is a place that you can take the energy that would be this incredible energy that could be used to, let's say, power the entire world, but like with in a way that you can't imagine. It's like, how would an atom be able to power the whole world. That doesn't even make any sense, right? That makes no sense. Like, oh no, but if you split it, yes, actually, that's what would happen. Okay, or bombard or whatever it is. I don't remember if you have to split it or whatever you do to do that. It's like, that doesn't make any sense to us because we're not scientists. But what if there's a way, there's also a spiritual way to take all the spiritual energy to have a conduit for it to be in this world and to be able to impact human beings, to be in relationship with divine, and to maximize their spiritual and physical life on this planet. If you had the keys to that, that's what everybody's really looking for, which is why everyone's fighting over the land of Israel, because it's here. Okay, it was designated to be in a certain place. And before it gets to the land of Israel, it's first, the micro version of it is built in the Mishkan, is built with the Mishkan in the desert. And we have all of these directions of how it's supposed to be built. So we're going to talk about a few of the ideas. And if we can understand this, and I'm going to say understand, we're going to talk about it in a way that takes it out of the, I don't know what to call it. If you have your chumash, even if you look at the pictures, if you have the stone chumash, which I know some of you just got, I'm so happy for you, and you look at the pictures, Debbie and Dorothy, if you look at the pictures even in here, I can't say that it looks so inspiring. Honestly, it just doesn't really look that inspiring. It just looks like some drawings. It looks kind of quaint. It looks maybe like a little primitive. It doesn't look like it's going to do anything. It doesn't look like it's going to do anything because things that really do something sometimes don't look like they're going to do anything. And that was the building of the Mishkan. So what is it that had to happen and what does happen? Let's just talk about one piece. Let's talk about what are called the planks. Nothing can be more boring than wooden planks. These are called karashim, and let's take a look at those. Let's look on page 455, which is chapter 26, verses 15 through 25. So let's get to that. Hold on a second. Page 455. We're not going to read all of this, but you'll see it's at bottom of 455. You'll see in the margin, it says walls of the tabernacle. You shall make planks of the tabernacle of acacia wood standing erect. Okay, so that sounds like my directions for building our sukkah. First of all, you have to stand up the planks. That would be a good way to start. Okay, stand them up. So it says Atzei Shitim in the Hebrew, Atzei Shitim Omdim, standing. So the commentaries all say, well, duh, you don't have to be such a, you have to be pretty not so smart to realize that, of course, the planks would have to be standing because it's to build the Mishkan. So you shouldn't have to tell me that, but yes, it's telling me Omdim. Why is it telling me Omdim? It says because they needed to be placed, they were wood, and they needed to be placed in the way the wood grew. So that what had been the bottom of the tree from which the planks had been cut has to be on the bottom, and the top has to be on the top. Is that for design, decorative appeal? It says no. It's to remember where these planks came from. Where did these planks come from? So first of all, who has planks in the middle of the desert? We know the Jewish people left and they took their belongings with them and they didn't have time to bake their dough, and now they've got planks. Like, did they pick them up at the local bazaar as they were heading out after splitting the seeds? Like, we're gonna need some planks. Like, where did they come from? It says they came from trees that Yaakov had planted when he came down to Egypt with his family. Why did he bring trees? He didn't buy them as saplings. I always had thought that he planted them there, like he went to the greenhouse in Egypt, Cairo, and said, I need to buy some trees. My people were going to need them. He says he planted them. He brought the plants down. He brought the trees down from Canaan, from the land of Israel. Where did the trees come from? It said they were from Abraham. If you remember that it says Abraham established what was called an eshel, an orchard, that he used as a place where he welcomed guests and had people come to his tent. They had an eshel. He had an orchard. And that orchard had trees. And so Yaakov went before he went down to Egypt to get the trees and to uproot them and take them to Egypt. Now that's a really weird thing to do. I'm going to take some trees with me. I mean, we packed up our house. Never once did it occur to me that I should like pick up a tree and bring it with me. It's like, why would I need a tree? There are trees in Egypt. So it was like, but he wanted those trees from Abraham for several reasons. One is a tree is symbolic of a family and of history. So in order to connect the Jewish people literally to their roots and to their branches and to their trunk and to who they came from and where they came from, and that the tree had to come from the land of Israel because it had to be planted literally in the minds of the Jewish people that Israel is their homeland and they are connected to Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebekah, Jacob and Rachel and Leah. And so he took the trees, uprooted them and took them to Egypt, planted them, replanted them there, and then the Jewish people cut them down and took them with them when they left Egypt. Just as they took Joseph's bones, the Egyptians must have thought we were crazy. First you go and you get the bones of somebody, and then you go cut trees down. It's like, who are these people? The Jewish people are different. Like, take the trees. So it says that these acacia wood trees had to be erected for the building of the Mishkan, the way they grew, so that it would be a symbolic representation and would actually do something. It actually does something. It's not, oh, that's so sweet. It does something to have the wood like that and to have it all connected. So those were just the crushing, those were just the planks. And they also had to be completely flush. Okay, so this meant that they had to all be connected because what's the point? Is that we are all connected, that we are connected one to the next, each one of us. And so we had to be able to see that and see that representation. So when that's connected, it's like wiring a circuit. It's not just like that's a nice sentimental. So for me, I've always thought more of things being symbolic, but not necessarily that they were significant in that they did something, that there was some sort of metaphysical thing that happened when these things were all put up. Okay, so just as an interesting kind of jumping ahead, we know that the Mishkan was taken apart when it was transported, when the Jewish people traveled. And the Levite families were in charge of carrying all the parts of the Mishkan. And there were certain parts of the Mishkan that they couldn't look at, even though they were responsible for carrying them. So the Kohanim, with like the ark, the menorah, all of those things had to be covered, and the Levites couldn't look at them. So why couldn't they look at them? It's like, we don't have like a voodoo thing, like, oh, you know, it's taboo, you can't look at it. It's like, why couldn't you look at it? It's like there was something about the power of it. Like you say, don't look at the sun. You can't look at it. For where you are in your job description and who you are, you cannot look at it because it's not going to be good for you. Something will happen. So all of these pieces are not just, again, they're not just sentimental and symbolic, and they tie us to our history, or we have an emotional connection. This is something that's being wired together in a scientific way, in a metaphysical way, that's actually going to create something that you wouldn't think would be able to be created. That is just the crushing. Let's talk about something that appears in the Mishkan that Christianity has picked up on, which are the kruvim. What are kruvim? Those are, they are translated as exactly the cherubs, okay? The reason they're called cherubs is that's based on the Hebrew kruvim, okay? I don't know how they got the CH out of there, but it's kruvim. So kruvim are the cherubs. Where were the cherubs? So mostly we tend to think of them on the place where it's mentioned in this picture, which is on page 447. Right here on the cover of the ark, these things pointing up here, these are the kruvim. these little cherubs that said that they had faces of children. This is where the Christians get the idea that angels are have little children with flappy wings. That's where they get it from, is from these cruvim on the ark. But these cruvim here, which were on the cover of the ark, and they were made out of gold, it's not the only place that cherubs are mentioned. It's not the only place that the cruvim are. So we're going to take a look and see where else do the cruvim appear and why are they there? Okay. And again, it seems like Renaissance art, sweet, I don't know, something angelic, sounds kind of spiritual, nice, fluffy thing. It's like there's something else really important going on. Let's take a look at where else the cruvim appear. So the cruvim also appear, hold on one second. They appear on, okay, we already saw on page 447 on the cover of the ark. Go to page 449. They are also going to be there. On page 449, chapter 25, verse 17. Oh, wait, sorry. Those are the cruvim. Sorry, that's the cruvim for the cover of the ark. Sorry, I didn't mean that. Chapter 26, verse 31. Skip ahead. Chapter 26, verse 31. And that is on page 459. This is a partition. You shall make a partition of turquoise, purple, and scarlet wool and linen twisted. He shall make it with a woven design of cherubim, of cruvim. You shall place it upon 4 pillars of acacia wood, plated with gold, with hooks of gold upon silver sockets, etc. This partition is going to be, where is it? Look at the end of the verse 33, between the holy and the holy of holies. So where else is, so now we have the cruvim in 2 places. We have it above the ark, and we also have it separating the holy and the holy of holies. What's inside the holy of holies? That's where the ark is inside the holy of holies. In the holy, the not holy of holies, in the holy place, that's where the shulchan, the table is. That's where the menorah is, and that's where the mizbeach, where the altar is. So those things are in the holy, and then there's a partition, and then you have the holy of holies. Separating the holy from the holy of holies is going to be something where the cruvim appear. That's where the cherubs appear. And then they're going to be in a 3rd place as well, and that's going to be on, hold on a second, chapter 26, verse 31, which is, no, that's what we just read, sorry. Chapter 26, verse 1. Let's go back, chapter 26, verse 1, page 453. This is going to be the kind of like the wrapping around the tabernacle itself, around the Mishkan itself. And what does it say? Chapter 26, verse 1, page 453. You shall make the tabernacle of 10 curtains, twisted linen with turquoise, purple, and scarlet wool, with a woven design of cherubim shall you make them. Okay, so now we have 3 places where the cherubs are. On this outer part that we just read, now, this like the outer around the Mishkan, on the inside in the partition between the holy and the holy of holies, and inside on the top of the ark. So one of the things we know is that it says that God spoke to Moshe from between the cherubs. He would go in, and it was from between the cruvim. That's where God spoke to Moshe. Okay. What are these cruvim? So first of all, we think of them, they're angelic. But what does that mean? So in Judaism, again, it's very hard to get out of our heads the Christian notion. We have like, oh, I believe in angels, and I have an angel who watches over me. Like we have like all this like cutie fairy tale stuff around angels. A cherub, the cruvim, are about a spiritual force that acts as a place of guarding and dividing. And we saw the cruvim one other place very, very, very early on in the Torah. Where did we see those cruvim? In Bereshit, Genesis, page 3. Page 3 of your Chumash, go all the way back. And let's take a look at that. Where are we seeing that? No, that's not right. Not page 3. I apologize. No, that's not it. That's something else I'm going to tell you about. You are going to look at it and say that was chapter 3. Sorry. It's when the Jewish people, it's chapter 3, verse 23. Chapter 3, verse 23 is on page 19. After Adam and Chava are banned from the Garden of Eden. So Hashem God banished him from the Garden of Eden to work the soil from which he was taken. And having driven out the man, he stationed at the east of the Garden of Eden the cherubim, and the flame of the ever-turning sword to guard the way to the tree of life. It says, so we see the cherubim there. It's like when we see the cherubim, it says they are guarding the path, guarding the way to the tree of life. What's the tree of life? That is the tree of immortality. It's the tree of life, the Eitz Chaim, that is the Torah. It is the divine word of God. This is the essence. This is what they were going to be able to eat from had they waited, but they didn't, and they ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil instead of eating from the tree of life. And so they're forbidden, and so the Kruvim are there. And what is our goal? Our goal is to get ourselves back to the garden, because if you have Kruvim that are guarding the way to the tree of life, you could say, are they guarding it to keep you away, or are they guarding it to make sure you can get back? So if you have a sentry, is the sentry telling you go this way, or is the sentry saying you can't enter? So you might think it's like they're guarding it, but they're also there guarding it to make sure there is a way back. So the Kruvim are the sign of the path back. The Kruvim in the Mishkan are there as not just representatives of the way back, but the Mishkan is the path back. And how is that going to work? We said before that the whole purpose of the Mishkan is to be able to bring down the divine energy, spirit, to connect with humanity, to connect, I'll say for right now, to connect with the Jewish people and eventually all of humanity. Because ultimately the Beit HaMikdash, our holy temple, is meant to be a house of prayer for everybody, for all of humanity. It's not just for us. So what's happening in the Mishkan? So let's take a look at this. How many of you have heard that on the shulchan, on the table in the Mishkan, that there was bread, there were the 12 loaves of bread, which were on, and you can have the picture also. You can actually keep, well, we'll come back to Breshit in a minute. We will go back to our parsha and look at the picture of the shulchan. Again, it doesn't look so interesting. It looks like just a regular baker's table here. Okay, and this had loaves of bread on it. And what do we know about the loaves of bread? So that they stayed fresh and warm the entire week. And then on Friday, the Kohanim would put in fresh, newly baked loaves and take out the other ones and eat the ones that had been there for the week. You think, oh, why can't I have the fresh ones? But they were just as fresh as the new ones that were going in. So how did that happen? Now I always thought like, oh, like the freshness of service of Hashem, whatever. Yes, and yes, and yes. But what does that mean? That bread stayed warm and fresh. Think more scientifically, metaphysically. What does that mean wasn't happening in that space in the Mishkan during that week? What would you say? How would you describe what was or wasn't happening there? If anybody wants to volunteer, Darlene.
Almost like, kind of like time was standing still. It was sort of a void of being affected by time.
Exactly. Time stood still, frozen time, exactly. In other words, it was an infinite present moment. Time did not pass. There was no time, okay? There was no time because it was just like it was just taken out. It's like, really? Where does that happen in the universe where time gets like warp, where there's a time warp? It says that happens like in a black hole, wormhole, where it bends. And so it says like the laws of physics break down. Now, how do you explain this even to us in 2024, let alone you're going to convey that in the Torah? It's like, don't know how to tell you all this, but let me just tell you that when you put this all together, it's going to create a place where time stands still, where time is not relevant, and that dimension goes away. Now, the only place that happens is where something very powerful is going on with energy, because it has to do with gravitational force and all these other things. So that's at one cherub level, is marking off this division, the sectioning off of within this place, time does not work the way it works outside of this cherub protected area. But now we have another cherub. No more cherubs that are separating the Holy of Holies from the holy. So what happens inside the Holy of Holies? So there's something very interesting. Inside the Holy of Holies is the ark. Now the ark is described as being, it's 2.5 cubits by 2.5 cubits. And the Holy of Holies itself is 20 cubits by 20 cubits. So this is not in the Zohar. It's not in the mystical tradition. It is in the Talmud, in Yoma. It says that here's this picture, something we'll just call it, we're just going to do this width here. Just say 20 cubit. We'll just call it 20 feet because we don't really know about cubits so much. 20 feet. It says that there were 10 feet on either side of the ark. Well, how's that going to work? If the whole Holy of Holies is only 20 feet wide, and there's 10 feet on either side, on both sides of the ark, then what's the problem here?
You're not accounting for the space of the Aron. It's
what about that's like how if I were designing something, that's how I would end up designing. It's like, oh, I actually forgot to allow enough space for the thing I'm trying to put in here. Like, there's no room for the ark. So in the Talmud it says it's because the ark didn't take up any space. It's like, well, how can you tell me that? Because you just told me that it was 2.5 cubits by 2.5 cubits. So it does have a dimension. It's like, oh, it has a dimension when you build it, but when you put it in that space, and it's in this kruvim defined space that is a separation, then something's happening here. And what's breaking down inside the Holy of Holies?
Space.
We had time, right? So in the regular tabernacle area, we had time got distorted. In the Holy of Holies, space doesn't work the way we thought it worked. It's like it disappeared. In fact, so much so it says, you know how Raiders of the Lost Ark? It says that King Josiah says before Yoshiyahu Hamelech, says before the destruction of the temple, said he hid the Aron Kodesh. He hid it. Now, I always picturing like Raiders of the Lost Ark. Where did he hide it? Guess where it's hidden? It's hidden in plain sight. We can't see it. We can't see it. But it's here, but it can't be seen, which is really good news. That means we don't have to get it from the Vatican. So the menorah may be there, but the ark isn't. Okay, so it says he hid it. So it's there. It's where it's supposed to be, and it will manifest when it's supposed to, because it operates under a different, it's operating in a different frame of reference than we're used to thinking about. Okay, so that's inside the Holy of Holies. So outside we had time not working the way we thought it was. In the Holy of Holies, space doesn't work the way we thought it does. And now we have the kruvim on top of the ark. What's inside the ark is the luchos, the tablets, and eventually will be the Torah. But those luchos, it says, Those are described as, how are they described as being? It says they're described as white fire, I'm sorry, black fire on white fire. Black fire on white fire. What's fire? What's this? It says this, it's light, it's energy. It's the ultimate spiritual energy, is this dark, just like dark light on white light. We translate that now into our Torah as black ink on white parchment. Do you know you're not allowed to say that you want a different color Torah, that you want like to, I like purple, so how about a purple parchment? It'd be so, so nice. Can't do it. It has to be black on white. Why? Because it's black fire on white fire. And it goes all the way back to creation. It says that when God created, the very first thing that was created was light, separating the light from the darkness. And he called the light day and the darkness night. But it was that initial light was not the light of the sun. It was spiritual light. It says, what's inside the ark? It's a concrete energy of light. It's the ultimate powerhouse. You remember seeing, like, I don't know, cartoon movies or something where there's like a plan and they have to go on a planet and there's this like this place is like pulsating energy and it's like the energy source for the entire planet. I guess there was always some sort of thing on Star Trek where boom, boom, and like that was the energy force field. And if you got too close to it, what happened to you? Boom, boom, you couldn't be in that place. What do we know about being in the Holy of Holies where that ark is, where those kruvim are over the ark? It says Aaron, or the high priest, would go in on Yom Kippur. Only on one day of the year could he go in. And we have the Jewish history that talks about the number of high priests who went in and they didn't come out. They died. So what they would do is they would tie a rope around the Kohen Gadol's leg so that if he didn't make it, they could pull him out because nobody could go in to get him. They would pull him out. So it would be like you had to be meritorious enough. So they were talking about a spiritual, physical relationship that you're getting so close to this central power that if you're not worthy, you would not survive. And if anybody else went in, for sure, they wouldn't survive. It's like, that's pretty awesome. That white fire, that black fire, that energy, and that was the place where the cherubs were over in the most intense way in physical form, not woven into fabric, but in actual gold hovering over the ark. Partitioning off these three places, saying we're talking about primordial energy, primordial creation, time, space, energy. That's all there is. These three descriptions of the universe. And that when the Jewish people built this Mishkan, it wasn't just like, oh, this reminds us of creation. This was a recreation so that the Jewish people could experience this level of reality and understand and have a closer connection with the divine. This blew my mind, I have to tell you. Totally blows my mind. It's like, oh, this is way more. I feel like, my understanding of Torah is like at a kindergarten level. And then there's like, okay, you don't understand anything. There's so much more going on. So I want to share some other things.
Twilight Zone sort of space.
What was that?
Kind of like Twilight Zone, like out there.
Oh.
It's very different than anything we perceive.
It's like, and all of reality is like that. I mean, don't you remember the first time you looked, remember getting a science kit and the first time looking under like even my little microscope at home and like, that's what that looks like? Or even, remember they would have like little books. This was like at the wizard's chest or something. They would have like things magnified. This is your scalp magnified, like 4,000 times. It looks like a forest. It's like, what do we know? We just walk around having our life. We don't even know what's going on. So the Mishkan was the place where people could connect to a deeper reality that would blow their minds in a good way. because they could experience the reality in a different way. So a couple things related to this. It's interesting that in creation itself, in the description of creation back in Bereshit, there are 3 places where God uses the word to separate, lahavdil, like the word havdalah, when you make havdalah at the end of Shabbos, to separate between Shabbos and the rest of the days of the week. The rest of the world thinks that Monday through Saturday, Sunday are all the same. It's like they don't know that actually Shabbos is different. It has a different reality to it. So where are those 3 places? So let's take a look. And that's really what I said originally. Yeah, exactly. I'm me. When I said originally to go back to page 3. So now let's go back to page 3 in Genesis, because we're going to see that those separations that we just talked about, time, space, and energy, basically meaning light, because we know that light energy is basically everything is all light, and it turns into, concretizes into matter. And then from that matter, we get that, and then we get time. So we get energy turns into space, into like a thing, and then it turns into time. And that's why in science it's called the time-space continuum, even though we tend to think of time and space as being 2 different things. This is called the time-space continuum. So it's time, space, energy, time, and space. So where do we see this in creation? We're going to see that God separates places where those 3 things are involved. Starting in chapter 1, verse 4 of Bereshit, the very beginning. And you'll see where it says here. God saw that the light was good. Again, this is not the sun. This is the original light. And God separated between the light and the darkness. And the word is vayav del, Elokim bein ha'or uvein ha'choshesh. Okay, so vayav del, like Havdalah, made a differentiation. Anytime there is that is where in the Mishkan we're going to see the Kruvim. The Kruvim are going to be in a place where this light is being discussed. The separation of light and darkness has to do with the tablets, the luchot, dark fire on white fire being concretized into the tablets or inside the ark. We have Kruvim. The next place is going to be chapter 1, verse 7. That is on the second day. What do we have? A differentiation between? It says, verse 7, so God made the firmament and separated between the waters which were beneath the firmament and the waters which were above the firmament. So that we have the separation, and then we have the creation of, instead of just having all watery, we have upper waters and we have lower waters in the oceans and the seas, which is basically place, and that's the space. And again, we have the same thing of that he separated. They made a differentiation there. And let it separate between water and water. And then finally on chapter 14, verse 14, God said, let there be luminaries in the firmament of the heaven to separate between the day and night. They shall serve as signs for festivals, for days and years. They shall serve as luminaries in the firmament, et cetera, et cetera. And this is for the purpose of time, because it says for signs, for the festivals. How do we know when it's time for Pesach? It's time for Purim. From the sky, from the firmament. Says that's time and separation there. So the Kruvim time has to do with like what we saw on the bread that's staying fresh, is because time was standing still there. It was not operating in the same way. In the Holy of Holies, the separation there, space wasn't working the same because the ark took up no space in the 20 cubits. And then the energy of the infinite light, which is what the Torah represents, Torah or the infinite light, that was inside with the final Kruvim over the ark. It says when we say that it's a metaphor for creation, we mean at the deepest levels that, that Einstein is, with his theories of relativity and is talking about, is like, basically the Mishkan is creating a spiritual wormhole. It says, what's a wormhole? A wormhole is where there is a bending of the space and time to a place that it creates like a tunnel that you can get from one place to the next, like you would make a tunnel through a mountain. Instead of going all the way around in some big trip, you just go through. It says this is the connection when we say where heaven meets earth. Why does heaven meet earth in the Mishkan, in the Beit HaMikdash? This is because it was designed to create a spiritual wormhole. Now, scientists, I looked this up. They've never seen a wormhole. No one's ever seen a wormhole. However, Einstein's equations all require it, or not all of them, require it and are proven with them. And so it's considered, it's there, we just haven't seen it. It's like, that's wild. So the ark, it's here, we're just not seeing it because it's not in its place where it can turn into a wormhole. So it's doing something else, we can't see it. This black fire on white fire, the luchos, which is now translated for us into the Torah. So the Torah for us is the black on the white. So here's something, and we'll close with this if you'll give me a few more minutes, because I thought it was also so fascinating. Oh, I'm sorry, two things I want to say. We notice this word, vayavdel, of Havdalah, that it's mentioned when it's talking about things that are different, where we're separating between things that are fundamentally and structurally different. Light and darkness, Shabbos and the regular days, the 6 days of the week, holy and ordinary. And what else is in that list that we say every after Shabbos? Bein Yisrael la'amim, the Jewish people and all the other nations. It doesn't say we're better. It just says we're different. And there is a separation between us. We are functioning in one capacity. The rest of the world functions in a different capacity. We're right up there with day and night, Shabbos and the rest of the week, holy and ordinary, the Jewish people and the other nations. When we don't understand that, and we say, but no, we are like the other nations. It's like we are violating. It's not like, oh, you're not, that's not nice, or God's gonna punish you. We're violating as if we were trying to violate a law of physics. You can't say, I don't really believe in gravity. I want down to be up and up to be down. It's like, sorry, it just isn't. So that this separation is something that is fundamental spiritual infrastructure. And the Mishkan was a place where that all manifested itself very clearly for people to experience. So the last piece, and this was from Rabbi Mansour, which I just happened to hear as I was eating lunch yesterday. It's so fascinating. You know, you've probably heard, we've probably talked about, it says that the Jewish people are like the Hebrew letters in the Torah. Have you heard that? Like there's 600,000 letters in the Torah and 600,000 Jewish people. So there's like a whole idea about that. Yes, and here's another idea that says those 600,000 people, those were 600,000 root souls, but they really, when they were counted in the Torah, they were 600,000 men between the ages of 20 and 60. It was like our fighting unit group, 600,000 men. So let's just say that the letters are men or are the masculine. What are the women?
The white.
The white. We're the cloth. Cloth is the parchment. It says the men are the letters and we're the cloth. What does that mean? It says, you say like, oh, great, you just got to write on me. It's like, no, I am holding the letters. So the cloth holds the letters. The cloth, the parchment is what allows the letters to have a reality, to function, and to be read. Otherwise, there's no Torah. Okay, you can't have, obviously you can't have one without the other, but they're different functions. One is the environment, and one is the physical thing that's put on top of it. So here's a fascinating thing. This has to do with the word for man and woman. So a man is an ish, right? And a woman is an isha. Okay, ish and isha. So if you take the gematria of the word for cloth, which is the parchment, cloth equals 210. Letter is the word oat, aleph, vav, taf. The word oat is equal to 407. That gives you a total of 617. You have the cloth and you have the oat. You have the parchment and you have the letter. Together, they equal 617. We know we are supposed to put together ish and isha, man and woman. And specifically in marriage, but in general as well, the role of the woman and the man. The gematria of the word isha is 306. The gematria of the word ish is 311. Together, 617. So ish plus isha equals 617. Klaf, va'ot, the klaf and the letter equals 617. There has to be a totality. A klaf is not a letter is not the klaf. A klaf that thinks it's a letter is going to have a hard time. And a letter that thinks it's the klaf is going to have a really hard time. So they are meant to work together, and they are able to create the ultimate vehicle for the expression of God's divine word in this world. If in my life I am the cloth, I know that then my responsibility or my emphasis is to create the environment upon which holiness can rest. That's my job. You can call it your Jewish home, the way we talk, the way we interact, the way we behave, the way we present ourselves, everything about what we do. You say, well, what about for a man? It's like, well, in a way, it's a little bit the same thing, but they have more things that they have to do, specific things. Letters are very defined. The cloth is more general. It's there. The letters are very specific. So it's the same too with the responsibilities of the woman are more general and more open to her ability to express them as she wishes and what's appropriate for her and her family, or her and herself, her and a community, whatever the situation, personal situation might be. And the man's role is very minions at 617. Go. Okay, so put on your tefillin, put on your talis, put on your kippah, daven, all those things. Those are the letters. The cloth is, here's our Jewish home. Shabbos is being prepared. The candles are lit. The table is set. The holidays are prepared for. That's the cloth. It says, when we put that all together, we become the living embodiment of the Torah. One of the reasons that we stand when the Torah is taken out, did you ever notice that the Torah is taken out, that we stand up? The reason we stand up is because we stand up for a person who is a sage, a Torah sage. It says, if you stand up for the person who is the embodiment of the Torah, then how much more so should you stand up for the Torah itself? But those things go hand in hand. We are meant to be the expression of the divine in this world. The Mishkan facilitated our understanding that and our being able to put that into motion in this world. We are very much deficient because we don't have the Beit HaMikdash. We do not have the temple yet. But as President Javier said, don't worry, that prophecy will come too. And I have to say, I was very proud I could understand his Spanish when I listened to him say all this. So that was great. So this is all coming together. Things are going on that we cannot comprehend. And we are, unlike Genesis, which we think is just like Sunday school, the portions about the Mishkan, we can't even get ourselves to pay attention to. So this just hopefully having a little bit more of a touch of just think metaphysics and just think science, Go look up wormholes. Go look up at the things you think you're reading a Kabbalistic book. It was like, if you go there, time stands still, you fall in, you disappear, time and space ceases to exist. It's like, oh, we had one of those. It's called the Beit HaMikdash. It's like, we had one of those that we could make, that God gave us very specific directions on how to make that happen. And when we follow it, then we're able to have that relationship. God willing, Hashem should take our learning about this and trying to connect and delve into it, to take it as an offering that we want to have this in place again so that we can have our relationship go to a higher, deeper, more profound level. And with that, I'll wish you a good Shabbos. Thank you for the extra time. I appreciate it. And have a wonderful Shabbos, and hopefully we'll have more good news to share.
Thank you. Wow.
But remember, they lost 3 men.
That's true.
They did lose 3 more men. It's horrible.
I know.
But
I know it is.
They should only be safe
Amen.
and rescue all the hostages.
Amen.
Shalom. Shalom.
The three men, not when they were rescuing the hostages later this morning. Then we lost them, right?
I believe so.
I don't know exactly.
Today morning, yeah. No, I know
I
because
think
it
it was later. There weren't anybody killed during the actual rescue.
Yeah, this morning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
One soldier was injured in the rescue, but
yeah,
it's different than the other 3 that happened in Gaza at a different time.
Yeah.
Okay.
This morning. Yeah.
Thank you. Everyone be well.
Unbelievable.
Really?
Unbelievable. Thank you. I hope I understood. It's wow. It's a wow class. Thank you so much.
It's so mind-boggling. I listened to his give this class like 3 times. I'm like, wow.
Who was it from?
What's
His
the name
name is, I'll give it to you. It's Rabbi Shalom, Sholom, Ehrenfeld, Ehrenfeld.
Unbelievable.
It was on Torah Anytime. So one of the things is he also talked about is, he talked about Bezalel also, who comes later. We're introduced to him later, but he talks about that his knowledge, so that he knew how to manipulate the letters, that he knew, it's like if you said he's a geneticist and he knows how to manipulate the genetic code, you'd be like, oh, wow, that's incredible. Or he's a computer programmer, he knows how to program the whatever to make it turn into this whatever. It's like, that's amazing. So whatever it is that is our metaphor to understand that it's not this, I don't know what, like unsophisticated, but okay, so he was talented and he was a good leader and he was humble. It's yes, and that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a level that is beyond our comprehension. Again, this is like saying, oh yeah, I can write E equals MC squared. I can write that on the board. That doesn't mean that I understand physics. I don't even understand that one equation. It's like, but what do you mean? It's just an E equals MC squared. We're just talking about, energy and matter and something and squared. So I know what squared means. 2 squared is 4. So we look at the building of the Mishkan like that, like, oh, yeah, I can make a little model of a Mishkan. It's like, yeah, no, you can't. So like we don't even know what we're talking about. And so we tend to zone out and think like, well, this is like the boring part. And again, as I said, wake me up when we get to Bamidbar and tell me when there's, when we have, I don't know, at least some biting snakes or Korach's rebellion or the spies or something that's like a little more that I can follow that. And this stuff is just like, I'm falling asleep. Instead of like, oh my gosh, no, I just handed you the directions for understanding the creation of not just Earth, of the entire cosmos and all of the physics that go into it. Like, okay, so God's just saying, like, you would never figure this out on your own, so I'm going to tell you exactly what to do. And you see, there is no room for not even the colors. You could say, pick whatever colors look good to you. It's like, no, it has to be turquoise, red, this and this, and it has to be twisted, and it has to be like this, and it has to be like that. It's like, why are you being so picky? Like, well, would you tell that to a, an electrical engineer? It's like, why are you telling me I have to put the wire here? I mean, we had to have our, when we got back from Florida, we had to have our battery jumped in our car when we got back. So luckily one of our neighbors did it, but if you don't, even if you don't hook those things up right, if you don't do the red with the red or the black with the black, and you put them on in the right order or something, then you blow up the whole battery. I don't even know how to do that. It's like, okay, so what is it you exactly think you understand here? It's like, nothing. So, but at least we can say, I don't understand this, but this is so awesome. And I just want to know even one little thing. And this idea, I'm picturing Yaakov, just going back to the Kerushim. I'm picturing Yaakov uprooting those trees and taking them and planting them in the land of Israel. It's like, people must have thought the Jews are crazy. And yeah, we are. It's like, yeah, and you do things because we see the world through a different lens. And even in the putting up those Kerushim, it wasn't like, oh, well, you can put them however you want, so maybe the grain looks better going the other way. It's like, no, it has to be the way it grew, because that's what's going to create the connection. You can't have it upside down any more than you can put the batteries in. Well, what difference does it make if it's plus or negative? It's like, it'll still work. It's like, no, it won't. So I just find it humbling, beautifully, awe-inspiringly humbling. Darlene.
This is so crazy. I'm just could be really whatever. I was looking for a recipe, and it was on the internet, and it was like, it shows the bowl of the spices and the egg and the flour, and everything's in a separate bowl. And then very quickly it goes to the different stages, and then at the end how it comes out, whatever it is, cake, lemon bar, whatever it is. And it's like, you look at the initial ingredients and it's like, okay, I get it. And then at the end you can't identify it at all. And it's sort of like all the things that went into the Mishkan that are the physical things that you go, the planks of wood, the curtains, the stuff. But at the end, it creates something, well, you can recognize it, but it's sort of like that whole different creation that came out of it. I don't know if that made any sense.
No, it's exactly right. I mean, you could say even the same thing about a human being. I mean, if you looked at all of our component parts and you looked at, okay, we've got bones, so we've got calcium, and have all the different chemicals that are in us and all these things. It's like, but it's put together and it turns into a person. So how did that happen? What exactly made that happen?
All the things inside that we have no idea, that are right here, that are just going at it, and no clue.
We don't understand that either.
Yeah.
We actually don't understand any of it.
Right.
So like you're saying, the sum is more than the, how do you say it? The
Sum is what is created is greater than the sum of its parts. And it's not just that it's greater, it's something else that you wouldn't, it turns into something that you wouldn't predict that it could turn into, because it doesn't seem like you could say, okay, paint and a palette, paint and a whatever turns into a picture. Okay, so I understand it's more beautiful and it's more meaningful or whatever, but it's not something otherworldly. It's still a painting. But if you put something together and then something happens and it turns into something that is other than what the component parts would lead you that it could become, that's where it gets crazy. Think about light. Think about light. You have light from a light bulb. You wouldn't necessarily know that if you converge light in a very powerful way that you could create a laser that could do surgery. But that's different. I thought it'd be just really strong light. No, it turns into something else that doesn't seem connected to what it was made out of. Because it's like, wait, I don't think light does surgery. What is those two things do not connect in my mind that they're related. So I don't really think wood beams and tapestries with cherubs on them turns into a metaphysical altering of reality where time space doesn't work the way it did before I put it together. It's like, that doesn't really compute in my head. So I think it's like the ultimate science fiction, except it's reality. And like, all you have to do, just look up wormhole, look up black hole, and those things are like, is this Kabbalistic? Is this a science fiction story? It's like, no. And the scientists at least are saying, now we haven't seen it, but we know it's there and we can see the impact of it and we can see it proven mathematically. So we know it's true. We just haven't seen it, but that shouldn't stop you from acknowledging that something exists. So I just find it, we of our generation, of all generations, should can appreciate this more because we have access to seeing things or having information about things that we can't see. In the olden times, people didn't have information about things that they couldn't see other than what they could just guess. But now, like when you see like the Hubble, photos from the outer galaxies and whatever is like, and you're talking about thousands of light years or something away, it's like, we say those words, but we can't really comprehend that. I still remember when Benjamin was little, we'd be in the car. He said, like if you think about the universe too much, you get like a headache. And like, because it's like beyond.
Mind-boggling.
So
wormhole. This is what came up.
That's a wormhole. That's a wormhole. So you go right through the top.
Couldn't they come
Can
up
you
with
show
a
us?
name to a worm? Just conjures up a worm.
Wait, the light
A
is in
wormhole is that center part. You would go through the center, and you would get that's like it's a shortcut. It's like a tunnel through a mountain. But actually, scientists say, because the question is asked, could a person actually travel through a wormhole? And the answer at this point is most likely not, because the gravitational force inside a wormhole would be very unstable and it could end up crushing you. You would not emerge. Or like a black hole, if you went in, you're not coming out because everything, light ceases to exist. It doesn't exist. That's for us, it's like, what does that mean? Not like it's blown to smithereens. It doesn't exist. That's like beyond our comprehension. What does that even mean?
In the picture, you can see the light very strong. The picture you just showed.
That's a diagram. That's just a diagram.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, they've never seen a wormhole. No, that's not light. That's a diagram.
One.
Imagination. Okay, just
yeah, no, that's a graph. Do you see how that they're just showing the bending of time and space? Again, we're already in a different world when we say that time can be bent.
Wow.
They're talking about if you stand on the edge of a black hole for something like 1 minute, I think it said like 400 years would actually pass because time is warped. It's like, what does that even mean? I mean, I know that, like say like a watched pot never boils. Like I get that, or I get, it's 5 seconds till Shabbos and I still have 10 things to do. I get that, but not like, 1 minute on the edge of a black hole is actually 400 years. Like, wow. What does that even mean? So I don't know. I'm just not going near any black holes.
Wow.
I have to sign off. Thank you. Everyone have a good Shabbos.
All right. Have a good Shabbos.
Thank you. Thank you.
Enjoy the absolute marvel of creation. And more importantly, the marvel of the creator, which is.
Thank you so much.
All right. Take care.
Yes.
Beautiful Shabbos.
Amazing.
You too.
And I just say warm regards
Thank you.
to all of you. Bye.
Thank
you
you.
too.